I'm Ron Gant, and I'm the Vice President of Operations for Safety Compliance Management.
And I'm Paul Gant. I'm the President and Founder of Safety Compliance Management.
One of the things we use in the safety world to help us make decisions when it comes to implementing controls and helping to protect people is the hierarchy of controls. One of the most effective hierarchy of controls out there is a seven-step model. Okay? And let's say, for example, we're at a zoo and we want to have a tiger at the zoo. Okay? Well, the first step in the hierarchy of controls to make sure the tiger doesn't, do something bad to the people we want to have come to our zoo is something called risk avoidance. And so we can avoid the risk by not bringing the tiger into the zoo to begin with. Okay? And that would completely eliminate the hazard altogether. If we can't avoid the risk because we actually already have a tiger at the zoo, well, then the next step is to eliminate the tiger. We remove it from the zoo all completely. That's elimination. If we can't eliminate the tiger because we were a zoo, we got to have animals, then we can substitute the tiger out. Okay, substitution is the third step. And for example, we could use a bobcat instead of a tiger. Bobcats are generally less dangerous, but still have some risks. That's substitution. If we can't substitute it because we like a tiger, we want a tiger, well, then we got to put the tiger in a cage. That's engineering controls. We just got to make sure the cage works. If we don't want to put a tiger in the cage because we're kind of a forward-thinking zoo, we like to have the public interact with the animals, right? Well, then we can go to the next step in the hierarchy, which is warnings. Okay? We could put a proximity alarm on the tiger so when the tiger gets close to us or when the tiger is near the public, they're alerted to the hazard and they can take the appropriate steps, i.e. run away. Right. If we don't want to do that, though, because a warning system is kind of annoying, well, then we can go to the next step in the hierarchy, which is administrative controls. We can train everybody and make sure that only trained people are around the tiger. Okay? If we don't want to do that, though, because training the people is kind of difficult, we don't have to have all our visitors come through a training program, then we go to the last step in the hierarchy, and that's PPE. That's where we put people into a tiger protective suit, for example. The reason we go through that hierarchy of controls is because if you think about it, the further you go down the list, the more you are involved. And the more you are involved, the more likelihood there is for error, because if you think about it, the top 3 causes of accidents are men, women, and children. Okay? And the more people get involved, the more defeatable or the more likelihood there is for an error. And the higher up we go in the hierarchy, up towards the higher levels with risk avoidance, elimination, and substitution and engineering controls, the less defeatable those controls are, the less likelihood for error. The lower we go, the more likelihood for error.
And following up on Ron's analogy of the tiger, there was another safety practitioner named Reason. And Reason reasoned that you could think of those hierarchy of controls much like you think of Swiss cheese. Swiss cheese, as we know, have holes in the individual slices. So his thought was, if we put multiple layers of Swiss cheese in front of the hazard, between the hazard and the employee, we could afford a much higher level of protection. So, for example, we're working with a chemical hazard, and that chemical hazard is sufficient that it would cause harm to the employee. Well, we would put controls in place, starting maybe with engineering controls that would keep the material in its pipeline. If the pipeline failed, a warning system would go off, another level of control. So we wouldn't rely just on the pipeline working 100% of the time. It's got holes in it. We'd rely on the warning system alerting us. If that were the case, the warning system would tell employees who had procedures to get out of the way, or certain employees to come in and take care of the hazard. But they'd be trained in that, so there'd be another layer of Swiss cheese in front of us. And then finally, those employees that were going to be exposed to that hazard would have all of those warning systems and layers of protection, as well as PPE, wearing the right personal protective equipment. So if you have a hazard and you can line up multiple layers of Swiss cheese, what ends up happening is there's greater control of the exposure. Less exposure is possible, and the employees can work safely around that hazard.